Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome to the daily forecast for Thursday, July 4th, 2024. It is the day of Jupiter and therefore the day of the hearth. We have a waning crescent moon. We are in Cancer season, the Celtic tree month of oak, woodpecker season, Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Pluto retrograde, and of course it is Independence Day. So, on that note, I bring you this lovely picture I found on Pinterest of Lady Liberty. I found a pentacle done in the stars and stripes because the idea that pagans are not patriotic and that we don't love the land of our birth, that's just very silly. Pagans have always loved where they came from. And that doesn't mean that we deny our more distant heritage overseas, not in the least. So, a very happy Independence Day, and to our British cousins, you know, if you want to call it Happy Treason Day, I quite understand, because from the perspective of the motherland, that's exactly what it was. But this is kind of a sobering holiday this year. Because the country is in a great deal of distress. I mean, we're always having some kind of tussle about something, but I think only the most uninformed person would think that things are not at a heightened degree, that there are not more significant and more serious problems. And we're not sure how it will turn out, and we're not sure what the implications will be. And it's all the more tragic because if you look at the Declaration of Independence and you get to where the colonies were listing their grievances against the crown, you'll see a lot of those have very close parallels and similarities to grievances that people have today against the federal government, against opposing parties. There are severe issues, and we're going to have to meet those head on. And I would also like to just bring out that those of us who are American around here, a lot of sacrifices were made for this to become a country to begin with, for us to have the liberties that we are now desperately trying to defend. A lot went into it, and I'm sure none of us want to be the generation that let everybody down. And it's scary. We have a lot of challenges, but I would suggest, rather than letting this cast you down too much, although it is very serious, use this as fuel to rejuvenate your spirit, to rejuvenate that of your family and your neighbors, and saying, you know what, at our very founding, people said we can get together and we can figure out how to do something that's going to work for us here on this soil, on this land. And we can do that again. We don't know what it will cost. We don't know what action it might involve, but we can do it. Things are not hopeless. And I think it is time to start taking some of the doomsayers, the people who do nothing but tell you how nothing is going to work out, and how you should just surrender now, and other things. People who are actively bringing morale down. It is time to just take them behind the woodshed and give them a few at this time. So, food for thought. And of course, speaking of food, I hope you have a fantastic picnic today, because what is Independence Day without grilling, without bringing out the apple pie and fireworks and all of the fun stuff? Really make this a fun occasion. Now for our astrology. The sun is in Cancer, cardinal water, representing intuition. The moon begins the day in fourth quarter Gemini, mutable air, representing adaptability. Then at 3:44 p.m. Central Time, it goes void of course. Then at 3:51 p.m. Central Time, it enters fourth quarter Cancer, cardinal water, and that's when the emotions get defined by sensitivities. So if people get a little bit misty-eyed later on in the afternoon and evening, don't be surprised. They're feeling the effects of that moon. And if you happen to have your moon in Cancer, really expect to feel a bit of a whammy on this one. Mercury is in Leo, fixed fire, representing ideals. Venus is in Cancer, cardinal water, representing frugality. Mars is in Taurus, fixed earth, representing purpose. Jupiter is in Gemini, mutable air, representing questing. Saturn is in retrograde Pisces, mutable water, meaning to redefine dreams. Uranus is in Taurus, fixed earth, representing renovation. Neptune is retrograde Pisces, mutable water, representing a spiritual awakening. And Pluto is in retrograde Aquarius, fixed air, meaning that we need to examine our intentions. So again, as a reminder, the Saturn retrograde, reevaluate goals, reconsider commitments, reclaim authority. And for the Neptune retrograde, reimagine your dreams, and for Pluto retrograde, reclaim ability to regenerate, reconsider what deserves your energy, release attachments that do not serve. And for our moon phase, it is that waning crescent, so we are still purging, resting, and meditating. For the Cancer moon, do have a nurturing atmosphere or create one. Do focus on your family bonds, stock up your pantry, and specifically give consideration to the needs of your kitchen pantry, summer kitchen pantry, I should say. The needs of the kitchen during the summer are quite a bit different than what we are needing in the depths of winter. Lighter items, perhaps having more citrus, more fruits, things of that nature. Just be very mindful about our physical needs for the season. And then the don'ts are publicity, objective tasks, hyper emotionalism. So Jupiter in Gemini wants to go a roving. That is its general mode of being. And then we have the Cancer moon we're going into, and it wants to stay at home, spend time with the family, and just watch the sun go down at its leisure. And of course, today, watch the sparkly, pretty fireworks. So you will probably be feeling this slight conflict between I want to go out and adventure and I want to be home and be comfy. So perhaps letting your adventures of today be the adventures of your imagination, the adventures of your hopes and your dreams, and what you want to work towards going forward. That might help reconcile these energies a little bit. So for today's tarot card, we have the Eight of Wands. Its keywords are work, employment, commission, craftsmanship, skills and business. And with wands, think fire element, masculine energy, projective energy, drive. And with the number 8, think new beginnings. We've come full circle after the 4, and so we're at the second cycle. So that is 8, and so we're beginning afresh. And of course, this has to do with getting down to business, looking improving your skills, not resting on your laurels, but continuing to actively carry out your affairs, getting better at your hobbies, getting better at your profession, being more diligent in what you do, and making sure that you're effective in what you do. You know, it's one thing to do a job and have it be good enough, and quite another to say, I'm going to make this the best possible job that I possibly can. One mindset is pretty lazy, and the other is far more noble. So if we are hoping to integrate ourselves more so into a pagan mindset, we're going to be more so in that pursuit of nobility rather than in the pursuit of mediocrity. Today's Celtic Triad reads 3 kinds of contenders of the death of a powerful rich person. They're detractors for their reputation, kinsmen for their goods, and worms for their carcass. So it's quite a thing to contemplate on a holiday. But looking at this triad, the people who are the detractors of the reputation of the dead. Generally speaking, it is considered to be unbecoming to speak ill of the dead, but that never seems to stop some people, even if there really wasn't, much to complain about. It's one thing if someone was an absolute villain their whole life, and then they die. I mean, there's not much you can really say. But if someone was, a basically general good person, who lived their life decency, and then some people are using the occasion of their death to pick fault, that's just a really nasty impulse. And then the kinsmen for their goods. I mean, it naturally and properly, relatives inherit one's possessions after one dies. Although the gleeful the way in which some people stake their claim with unseemly haste, that's not very good. That is suggestive of greed and not really missing the person. I mean, the fights people get into over, who gets grandma's china cabinet or who gets that and who get that. It can create a lot of long-lasting family resentments and problems and arguments. And I've known some families where it never really got resolved. It just went on and on and on. So I think trying to bring a spirit of reasonableness that would be much better on these occasions. And of course, you can't control what people do when they're determined just to listen to the worst aspects of their nature. But we can choose to do better. And then the business of the worms for the carcass. I mean, that is just a reality. Buried or cremated, we all return to the soil sooner or later, and in one way or another, the worms will get their due, and that's part of the whole cycle. And I think I have found that it does tend to help thinking about the life, death, reincarnation, cycle that we have. I do think that it helps thinking this is just different phases of matter. Sometimes we are existing as beings of energy, and then we go into the flesh, and we spend a period of time in that flesh, and then we shed it. Then we spend a period of time, in the ether as energy. That is a little bit easier, I think, sometimes to get my mind around, and also it helps me be a little bit more accepting of just kind of this natural cycle. Because of course, death is a sad occasion, and no one really looks forward, or it's not good for anyone to really dwell upon what happens to your physical remains after you go. Um, it helps to just kind of accept that this is all part of the ebb and flow. So I know that some people really struggle. They don't. Obviously they don't like death, but they find it very difficult and very hard to think about. But this is something that we all have to come to grips with. The physical mortality, but physical mortality does not have an impact upon the immortality of our spirits. So I hope that comes as a comfort to whoever might need to hear something of that kind today. Now, for today's magical intention, it is healing. I chose healing very deliberately because we need to do some healing in this country. The color for that is turquoise. The plant is the oak. I chose the oak because not only because it's significant in one of the spiritual traditions that my own borrows from, Druidry, that has a very strong influence on the British Isles, and of course with Wicca witchcraft, that takes a lot of influence from Druidry. And in that, the oak is viewed as the world tree. It has roots that are almost a mirror image of the branch structure below the ground. So as above, so below. That is a really beautiful symbol of that general principle. And so for the oak, I think for us in America, learning to heal not only what we see above the soil, but also healing what is beneath it, taking a good long look at those roots. It's why I've gotten into many an argument with people lately who have said, oh, it was all Christian, Judeo-Christian values and nothing outside of it. And when you point out that the very idea of republics, democratic process, limited authority, that these came from pagan philosophy, they will go blue in the face and they will never admit it. But the reason why I keep pushing back on this is because things are never settled until they are settled right, which if you recognize that expression from Miss Marple, I congratulate you. But there's a lot of truth in that. And until we acknowledge where the roots of the ideas for this nation really come from, that's going to really compromise the healing process, how constitutional rule could be restored down the road. It really gets in the way of understanding, what is needed in order to create a society with so many different people. We have to go back to those roots and have to acknowledge that those roots have a much older and more ancient and far more pagan European character to it than the biblical stuff that was superimposed over it. That's something we have to come to grips with. Also for our healing, animal is the eagle. Obviously, I chose that because that's our national emblem. And the crystal is the Larimar. I like the Larimar because it's a nice crystal to work with. It doesn't get as much recognition publicly as other crystals, and so it's also a good opportunity to introduce it to anyone watching who might not be familiar with it, and also just because it's really, really beautiful. Look at the tranquility of the colors. I look at that and I just start feeling stress wash away from me. And in order to have a successful healing process, you do have to have a removal of stress, because stress kills. It will kill you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. It makes any ailment that you have worse. So getting some of that stress energy out of your system, it goes a long way towards promoting that healing process. And also remember, our healing efforts that can be directed towards the nation at large, particularly if we do join forces. And I'm not saying that we all do some massive ritual, but I'm saying that if those of us who do love this country, if we are gradually focusing our energy towards trying to move it into a bigger place, that does ultimately combine into a kind of a tidal force. And this is the time when everything is in flux to make our energy felt, to make sure that things are moving in a direction. It's one thing to fight the battle and lose, but if we surrender the battlefield and just let people who don't really believe in human dignity or human freedom, who don't actually believe in democratic republics, if we allow people like that to take center stage unopposed, we will be the authors of our own defeat. So I would encourage people not to view themselves as powerless sideliners, because you're not. There are things we can do. They aren't always overt, but then magic almost never is. So make use of your skills. Now for practice. Thursdays, we honor hearth deities, of course, and we might also honor Libertas for Independence Day, because if there's one deity that I think might encapsulate the American spirit, it would be that one. Also, we could work on our throat chakras, contemplate what aspect of your Jupiter sign that you most resonate with, read up on the lore for nymphs and nereids, and celebrate Independence Day in a pagan fashion. There's no reason why you can't have a ritual today honoring various deities who you think have very helpful, beneficial influences upon the country, those who have values that are essentially that our founders borrowed from, knowingly or not. Honoring them, asking for their aid as we go forward in this project, that's something that you could absolutely do. And no one has any right to tell you otherwise. Now for today's journal prompt. This is a big, big thing to think about, because I think once you go down that rabbit hole, you might find yourself occupied for a spell. But what do you need to declare independence from? When in order for this to become a nation, we had to declare independence from the crown, and we had to win a war in order for that to mean anything. So what is it that you are needing to be independent from, you personally? So that could be something interesting to think about today. But of course, don't spend too much time in contemplation. It is a holiday, for those of us who are Americans. So enjoy it. Have a good day, if at all possible. And of course, come back tomorrow for the next edition of the Daily Forecast. Send me a little hello in the comments today if you enjoyed what I had to say. And of course, I will see you guys next time. Bye.